You don't need to raise your voice to raise your value. You just need to speak like you mean it. Respect doesn't come from volume, it comes from presence. Most people don't realize this, but the way you use your voice, not just the words you speak, is what makes people stop and listen. It's not about being loud or aggressive, it's about being intentional. When you walk into a room or speak up in a conversation, your voice either commands attention or gets tuned out. The difference: power doesn't live in volume, it lives in control, and control starts with understanding that your voice is one of your most valuable tools. Let me tell you something most folks never learn: your tone carries more weight than your actual message. You can say all the right things, but if your voice trembles, trails off, or sounds unsure, people won't remember the words. They'll remember the energy, and if that energy sounds apologetic or scattered, you'll be treated accordingly. But when your voice sounds calm, grounded, and certain, even if you're just saying "I don't agree" or "let's try something else," you create space. You create pause, and that pause is where respect grows. We often think we need to speak faster to keep up or sound smarter. But here's the truth: fast talkers get lost, powerful speakers get remembered. Slow it down, let your thoughts land. When you rush, your message evaporates. When you pause, even for a second, people lean in. They want to know what's next. Pauses give weight to your words. They show confidence, not hesitation. Silence, when used well, is a leadership move. And your volume, it doesn't need to go up to prove your point. Raising your voice is often the fastest way to lose it. You don't need to overpower people, you need to center yourself. A calm tone says, "I'm not here to dominate, I'm here to lead." That kind of energy creates trust. People will mirror your tone before they even process your message. So when you stay grounded, you invite them to do the same. Let's talk about filler words. You know, the ums, the likes, the you knows, we all use them. It's human, but here's the thing: the more filler you use, the more people question what you're really trying to say. And when people start questioning your clarity, they stop giving you respect. Cut the fillers, practice silence instead. Replace with a breath. Let the moment hang if you need to collect your thoughts. That pause will serve you better than any space-filling noise ever will. And then there's inflection, the subtle up or down in your voice that reveals what you really believe. If every sentence sounds like a question, even your most confident points will feel uncertain. Say it like you mean it. That doesn't mean shouting it, it means anchoring it. Let your statements drop at the end, not float up. That small shift, it changes the entire posture of how people receive you. Now maybe you're thinking, "Oh well, that's easy for confident people. I'm still finding my voice." But here's the thing: this isn't about personality, it's about practice. Everyone starts somewhere. Power in speech isn't a gift, it's a habit. You don't have to fake it. You just have to own your moment. Even if your hands are sweating, your heart is racing, keep your tone steady. Keep your pace intentional. That's what people will remember. The truth is, people take their cues from you. If you sound like you're second guessing yourself, they will too. If you sound like you've already earned the room will rise to meet you. You don't need to convince them, you just need to be clear with yourself. The way you speak tells people how to treat you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say less, but say it better. A single sentence, delivered with presence and pause, can speak louder than an entire speech filled with fluff. Don't feel the need to explain everything. You're not auditioning for approval, you're owning your truth. So if you want to speak with power, start here. Slow down, cut the noise, and ground your voice. No panic, no performance, just presence. Speak like your voice matters, because it does. And when you do that, people won't just hear you, they'll respect you. If you want to be respected when you speak, you have to first believe that you're worth being heard. That's the part most people skip. They jump straight into how to talk, how to stand, what phrases to use, but none of that matters if deep down, you don't feel like your voice holds value. Because whether you say it or not, people can feel it. They can sense if you're standing in your words or just hoping they land. That's why respect always starts with self-respect. You can't fake confidence, not really. You might put on a performance for a few minutes, but your energy always tells the truth. And if your energy is rooted in self-doubt, in feeling like you're not enough, like you're somehow smaller than the room, then your words won't hit the way they should. They won't carry the weight you want them to, because the foundation isn't solid. You see, the way you speak to others often mirrors the way you speak to yourself. If you constantly downplay your thoughts, apologize for your opinions, or second-guess your decisions internally, that bleeds into your conversations. You start leading with disclaimers: this might be a dumb idea, or I'm probably wrong, but let me just say. That kind of language isn't harmless, it chips away at your authority every time you use it. You're giving people permission to dismiss you before you've even said anything real, and I get it, we've all been there. Maybe someone shut you down too many times, maybe you were taught to stay quiet, stay agreeable, stay small. But let me tell you, staying small doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you invisible, and no one can respect what they don't see. So if you want to shift how others treat you, you've got to shift how you treat yourself when no one's watching. That's the real work. Start with how you carry yourself, not just physically, but mentally, the thoughts you entertain, the way you process rejection, the way you recover from a stumble. That's where real self-respect shows up. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about knowing your worth even when things go sideways. That steadiness, that inner anchor, is what gives your words gravity. Think about it, the most respected people you've met, they don't need to dominate the room, they don't chase attention. They just speak when it matters, and when they do, you feel it. That's not charisma, that's alignment. Their voice matches their self-worth, there's no gap between what they believe and how they express it. That's what makes them powerful. And this isn't about ego, either. This isn't about walking around acting like you're better than everyone else. It's about having enough self-respect to not need approval in order to speak with clarity. You don't need to convince anyone that you belong, you just show up like you do. That alone shifts the energy in any conversation. When you truly respect yourself, you stop chasing validation. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to prove your value with every sentence. You just say what you mean, and let the silence hold the rest. You stop shrinking, you stop apologizing for existing, and when people see that, when they see that you're at peace with who you are, they respond differently. They listen longer, they interrupt less, they take you seriously, not because you demanded it, but because your energy made it clear that anything less wouldn't make sense. It also means being okay with not being liked by everyone, because you won't be, and if your voice is always filtered through the fear of judgment, you'll water it down every time. You'll censor the parts of you that are bold, that are direct, that carry truth, and those are the exact parts that make people respect you. You weren't meant to blend in, you were meant to bring something honest to the table, even if it makes others uncomfortable. So before you walk into any room, before you open your mouth, before you respond in that meeting or conversation or conflict, check in with yourself. Do you believe what you're about to say is worth hearing? Do you stand behind it, not because it's perfect, but because it's real? If the answer is yes, then speak it fully, don't water it down, don't hand it over with a disclaimer. Say it like it matters, because it does. The way you show people how to treat you, it starts with how you treat yourself when you speak. And the moment you start believing your voice is enough, others will too. Most people think setting boundaries means confrontation. That you have to be aggressive, or that you have to create tension just to stand your ground, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can be calm and still be clear, you can be kind and still be firm, and when you learn how to set boundaries with clarity instead of emotion, that's when people really start to listen. That's when they begin to respect not just your words, but your presence. The truth is, if you don't set boundaries, someone else will set them for you. And those boundaries won't protect your peace, they'll serve their comfort. The more you stay silent when something crosses the line, the more that silence becomes permission. People can't read your mind, they read your tone, they read your posture, they read the words you choose or don't choose in moments that matter. It's not about snapping at people, it's not about shutting them down, it's about communicating what works for you and what doesn't without guilt. That guilt is where most of us get stuck. We overthink, we feel bad for speaking up, we start imagining how the other person might take it, how we might come across, and so we soften everything. We backpedal, we say it's fine, when it's really not. But every time you say yes when you mean a no, you're teaching people to ignore your limits. And worse, you start believing that your limits don't matter. Clarity is what changes that, not harshness, just simple, direct clarity. Saying things like, that doesn't work for me, and not with attitude, but with certainty, or, I'm not available for that right now. Or even, I hear you, but I disagree. These aren't combative statements, they're just honest ones. And honesty doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be consistent. People often confuse politeness with powerlessness, but you can be polite and still protect your space. You don't have to explain every boundary you set. You don't have to justify your decisions with long stories or apologies. You can just state them with respect, with clarity, and with the kind of energy that says, I know who I am, and I know what I need. That's strength, and don't underestimate how much your tone matters in these moments. If your tone is shaky or uncertain, even the strongest boundary can sound like a question. But when your tone is calm, not cold, just calm, people feel it. They feel the stability. They feel the groundedness, and when people feel that from you, they are far less likely to push back. Not because you intimidated them, but because you didn't invite the negotiation. You ever notice how some people can say the simplest thing and the whole room adjusts? They don't yell, they don't over-explain, they just say it once, clearly, and people shift. That's the effect of a clear boundary delivered with quiet confidence. It doesn't provoke, it doesn't escalate, it just lands, and people respect what lands. Now, that doesn't mean every boundary will be met with applause. Some people will resist it, especially if they've gotten used to you being flexible all the time. If you've trained people that you'll bend, they'll expect it. But that's not a reason to stop, that's a reason to keep going, because over time, they'll adjust, and more importantly, so will you. Setting boundaries is really about self-respect in action. It's the moment where you stop shrinking just to keep the peace. It's when you stop choosing temporary comfort over long-term clarity. Because peace without boundaries isn't peace, it's quiet resentment. And resentment has a way of leaking out in your tone, in your relationships, in the way you show up. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, frustrated, or invisible, chances are you needed a boundary and didn't set one. You needed to say a no, but said maybe. You needed to pause, but you pushed through. You needed space, but you stayed available. And afterward, you feel it, that weight in your chest, that tension in your jaw, that's your body asking you to protect it better next time. So the next time you feel that discomfort rising, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I actually need in this moment? Then say it, not emotionally, not defensively, just clearly, and then stop, let it be heard. You don't need to follow it up with a 10-minute explanation. You don't need to convince anyone that you're allowed to have a limit, you just need to speak it. Once cleanly, calmly, that's when people start seeing you differently. That's when they realize you're not someone they can walk through, you're someone they need to walk with. There's a quiet strength in knowing when to say something, and when not to, in a world full of noise, where everyone's trying to be the loudest, the quickest, the most clever. The people who actually get heard are often the ones who choose their words carefully and let them breathe. You don't have to fill every moment with sound to be taken seriously. In fact, some of the most powerful people in the room are the ones who speak the least, but say the most. We've been taught that to hold attention, we need to be impressive, keep talking, make our point again, repeat ourselves just in case they didn't get it. But that's not how real respect works. Real respect comes when you speak with intention, when your words are so well placed that people don't just hear them, they feel them. They land and they stay. You've probably been in conversations where someone's going on, and at some point, it all just blends together. There's no pause, no point, just noise. Now think about a time when someone said one sentence, one clear, calm, focused sentence, and the whole room shifted. That's not an accident, that's a choice. That's what it looks like when someone speaks less but says more. Sometimes we speak too much because we're uncomfortable with silence. It feels like if we don't keep talking, we'll lose control. But here's the truth, silence isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It gives your words room to breathe. It allows the other person to actually process what you just said, and it shows that you're not afraid of space, that you don't feel the need to prove yourself every second. That's where real confidence lies. You don't need a long paragraph to make your point, you need clarity. And clarity comes from slowing down, getting honest, and trusting that your words are enough on their own. The pause after a sentence is often more powerful than the sentence itself. It's what tells people you're not rushing. You're not unsure, you're letting your message sit, you're saying this matters, and I'm not afraid to let it echo. When you speak with that kind of intentionality, people lean in, they pay closer attention. You're not giving them noise to sift through, you're giving them clarity to hold on to. And that's rare, that's what makes people remember you. Sometimes we fill space because we're scared of being misunderstood. So we add more words, we over-explain, we say the same thing 3 different ways just to make sure it lands. But when you're grounded, when you're clear within yourself, you don't need to explain everything, you don't need to dress your message up in extras. You just deliver it clean, honest, and simple, and if someone doesn't understand, they'll ask or they won't. Either way, your value isn't in how much you say, it's in how clearly you say it, even in disagreement, especially in disagreement, speaking less and saying more is your strength. You don't need to win an argument by flooding it with words, you win by standing your ground without turning it into a battle. A sentence like, "I don't see it that way," said calmly, can be more powerful than 10 minutes of justification. Because when you're not scrambling to defend yourself, you're showing that you're not shaken, you're showing that your truth doesn't need decoration. The pressure to always be talking, always be responding, always be performing, that's where a lot of people lose their voice. Not because they don't have one, but because they bury it under too much noise, and over time, they forget what their voice sounds like when it's steady and still. But when you slow down, when you let silence do some of the work, you find your real voice again. The one that doesn't panic, the one that doesn't chase approval, the one that says exactly what needs to be said, no more, no less, and lets the message speak for itself. There's no need to prove your worth in every sentence, you're allowed to let your presence carry weight. You're allowed to take your time, you're allowed to trust that the right words, delivered in the right way, at the right time, are more than enough. So when you find yourself about to rush, about to ramble, about to talk just to fill the air, pause. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I really want to say right now, and then say just that. Fully, clearly, without dressing it up or watering it down, because when you speak less and say more, your words stop blending in. They start standing out. The way you speak says a lot about you, not just in one moment, but over time. You might impress someone once with a strong point or a confident delivery, but that moment won't matter if the next time you speak, you shrink, snap, or stumble over yourself. Respect isn't earned in flashes, it's built in patterns. It's not about a great speech here or a bold sentence there. It's about consistency, showing up the same way, again and again, regardless of who's in the room. You don't need to perform. You just need to be steady. The people who command the most respect aren't the loudest or the flashiest. They're the ones who show up with the same energy in every space. You know what you're going to get from them. They're grounded, they don't shift who they are based on who they're talking to, and that kind of consistency builds trust. It builds credibility, because when people know what to expect from you, they start listening differently. They take you seriously, not because of one powerful moment, but because of the pattern you've created through every interaction. There's a lot of pressure these days to constantly adjust, to mold yourself to fit the situation. You're in one room, and you play it small. You're in another, and you try to sound important. But the truth is, people can sense that shift. They might not call it out, but they feel it. And when your voice doesn't match your core, something gets lost, something gets questioned. So the real challenge, is to stay consistent even when it's uncomfortable. To be the same version of yourself in the meeting, at home, on stage, in casual conversation. That doesn't mean you never adapt. It just means you never abandon your foundation. That consistency starts with knowing what you stand for, what values drive your words, What truths anchor your message? When you're clear on those things, your tone becomes steady, your message becomes clean. You don't have to scramble for the right thing to say, it's already aligned with who you are. That's why it matters to build that clarity first, because when your voice reflects your values, people feel that integrity. And that's what earns respect over time. Now, here's something most people miss. Consistency doesn't mean being robotic. It doesn't mean saying the same things over and over or never showing emotion. What it means is that your presence carries the same weight, even if your words or circumstances change. You can be compassionate and still clear, you can be calm and still firm, you can be passionate and still measured. The consistency is in the way you carry yourself, in the way you own your space. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is to let your communication depend entirely on your mood. When you're having a good day, you're warm and articulate. When you're stressed, you shut down or explode. And then people start to walk on eggshells around you. They don't know which version of you they're going to get. That kind of unpredictability might get attention, but it doesn't get trust. Trust comes from emotional steadiness, from being someone others can rely on, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. You're human. You'll have moments where you falter, where something catches you off guard, where you don't communicate as clearly as you wanted to. That's okay. What matters is how you follow up. What matters is how quickly you return to center. Respect grows when people see that your missteps are the exception, not the pattern, that your default mode is strong, steady, and grounded. And here's something else, consistency builds confidence within you too. Every time you show up with the same energy, speak with the same clarity, maintain the same boundaries, you reinforce your own identity. You remind yourself of who you are. You don't have to keep reinventing your approach. You're not chasing a moving target. You're anchored, and that kind of confidence doesn't just help you, it helps everyone around you feel more secure. Because people are always watching more than they are listening. They're watching how you handle pressure, how you respond to challenge, how you treat others when no one's looking, and when your words match your actions, when your tone matches your truth, when your energy stays rooted, that's when your voice becomes powerful, not just for a moment, but for the long run. You don't need to impress people once, you need to show them who you are consistently enough that they stop questioning it. And once they stop questioning it, they start respecting it. That's how presence becomes power. You've heard the words. Now it's your move. Speak like you mean it. Set the tone, own the room, because the world won't respect your voice until you do.